Good evening, everyone. Tonight, Thursday, March 3rd, 2022, our regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen's meeting. Call the meeting to order and ask that we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Anybody wants to bring up or discuss? Okay, hearing none. Moving on. Our next section will be our public comment section. Donna, do we have anybody out there wanting to address the board?
No one at this time.
Okay.
Tiffany, I think Tiffany might.
Okay. Tiffany?
If there's nobody else, if that's okay. Tiffany Teely, 626 Gilead Street. And I just want to take a really quick moment to talk about the bravery and courage of the Ukrainian people. I'm sure we're all watching what is happening over there in Eastern Europe. It is shameful to watch someone like Vladimir Putin, a dictator, invade a sovereign nation. I'm particularly proud of this country and our president for supporting the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people. It is shameful that some American pundits and politicians are siding with Putin, because I don't think that's the American way. But I hope that at times during the next several weeks that we take a moment to think about the bravery and courage of the Ukrainian people who are doing all they can to fight for their country. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It also, and I want to echo those comments. I actually have relatives on my daughter's husband's side who live in Poland and are seeing firsthand some of the effects. And my son-in-law is actually looking at possibly going over. He was born over there, didn't come to this country until he was 15. And he and some of his other Polish friends are actually looking at the possibility of going over and joining over there. I guess the Queen of England is allowing any of England's citizens who want to go over. She's basically giving them, the release to go over with open arms. And I would love to see this country take the same stand. I think we need a powerful people to stand up and put that piece of, well, I'll be nice, in his place. So just a terrible, terrible atrocity. War crimes, it's just, you can't express it. And my daughter was over here today, and, she's looking at possibly losing her husband to go over for this battle, and understands. And so anyway, moving on. Thank you. Moving on. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, we have someone for good to know.
We do, Mr. Chairman. I believe Diane Nadeau is with us tonight from the Wyndham Chamber, and she's here to talk about the upcoming Maple Fest. So Diane.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good.
So we're very excited to finally have Maple Fest again after a 2-year hiatus. And it appears, at least on the vendor side, that no one is very hesitant about participating. We've already got about 105 vendors. And I know I'm looking at my email since this afternoon, and there's already a bunch of other people saying they're interested in participating, and my voicemail is full. So I think as far as the vendors go, the year before COVID, we canceled literally 3 days before the event. And, we had already spent money on advertising and stuff. So we couldn't refund all of our vendors, but we did give anybody who registered that year a significant discount this year, as best that we could. Most of our money goes to advertising that we bring in. So of course, up until 3 days before the event, all of that has been spent. The programs were published, and that's several $1,000s. So only one vendor has been upset about that. only one, which is great. We had 120 that year, and we're, like I said, at 103 now. That's great. We'd like to see more local people, as always. I have gone around and talked to all of the businesses in the area to warn them and give them heads up that there'll be a lot of traffic. In the area of the green, there's really only the Flower Girl, the Cachet, a nail and hair salon, eye care is only, most of those businesses to the left and to the right aren't even open on the weekends. So the Cachet hairstylist person is really my biggest concern, and a nail salon in the plaza to the east of the downtown. Those are the only two that are open. So parking, everyone always tries to park downtown no matter what. And I think we have that pretty under control. So what we do is we put signs that say parking for the event, go to Rand, go to Rand. It's all the way down Route 66. We put parking signs at all the business parking lots that say no event parking here, to try to keep those businesses open and their customers flowing. The event is the 19th and 20th from 10 to 4. Saturday, we set up around 7, and we're usually out of there by about 5 on Sunday. People will keep most of their tents and stuff there overnight and take their valuables home. And parking, of course, is at Ram with 2 shuttle buses that run about 5 minutes apart from each other. There's a few off-site locations like the Donkey Farm, the fire department. I'm trying to think of who else off the top of my head, but
AHM doing anything?
AHM, yes, thank you very much. AHM is doing their usual outdoor day. So they're
Anything
another
at St.
off-site
Peter's?
location. St. Peter's is not doing anything this year. They couldn't rally up enough. For them, for the churches, it's really hard because if you're in the festival downtown, you have to be there for both days. If you're doing something at your facility, it's a little easier because you can do it whatever day that you want. But I guess they have something else that they're doing before or after the Maple Fest, and so it was hard to rally volunteers for both. That's what I had heard. But
Are any events being done at the junior high or the high school?
no, there was an empty bowls at Ram, and they were going to try to do it there, but I said to them, you're the only vendor there. So I just don't see you having as much business as you would if you went to the downtown. So no.
Okay.
We could, and we would maybe think about next year using Ram again for the art. We haven't had a lot of good experiences in the past there, with the doors being open on time and vendors in and signage and all kinds of problems. So my artists who go to that show are a little gun shy. So maybe, with a good year behind us, we can convince them to try to come back and do the art and craft show in Ram. Most of the artists won't do outdoor shops, outdoor tents for the event because they don't want their stuff out in the weather. So they need to be inside, and there's too many of them. So it's hard to say, okay, the first 10 people can be in the library, and then after that you can't be. So it either has to be everybody has a space inside, or everybody has a space outside.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to keep the rules consistent across the board so that it's the same for everybody. Nobody can say this one got that and this one didn't get that. The library has been extremely cooperative this year and the last year too. So Kevin's been amazing, and we're using the basement to do activities for kids, some entertainment, music. We have a mermaid coming. Miss Mermaid will be there. She's pretty cool. She's really awesome. The kids can come and talk to her and get pictures and autographs and stuff. So that's more of activities. And if it's a really cold day, it gives a chance for the families with the young kids to come in and warm up a little bit, as opposed to it being an art and craft place where, you don't want your kids running around because there's too many things they can touch.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2 sugar houses, Woody Acres and Wenzel.
Oh.
Same as always. And pretty much everything's the same as it has been in the years past, except for whatever reason, well, some what is it, global services company bought up all of the portable toilets in the entire universe, and they are now charging like $400 a toilet. So that is terrible, terrible thing for all of us. But we were able to find one company that would deliver to Hebron, because again, the one that I use for my Wyndham events doesn't come out as far as Hebron. So porta potty seems to be the biggest issue for nonprofit or event coordinators these days. I think it's the mafia, must be the mafia. That's my explanation. They bought up all the portable toilets, and
I guess there's money in everything.
there's money in poop, that's for sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
As
It's
always,
been
I
a
would
great
say,
day.
if I could make improvements, it would be to have even more local groups. I have to tell you, there's no school groups, which I'm disappointed with. So no like PTA groups, no one trying to get money for field trips or after school programs, no sport organizations. So there's no Little League or, soccer groups or anything like that. Some of the churches are participating, some are not, because they're not even back to taking masks off and doing any kind of public stuff yet. So it would be nice to see more local participation.
Okay. Is there going to be any kind of a thing in the River East talking about, or with a map or anything?
So River East, I gave them a press release. I haven't talked to that reporter yet, but we are doing an 8-page insert into the Chronicle. So it doesn't get all the way out to where you are, but that just went to print, and it's got the maps. It's, like I said, it's 8 pages. We'll have thousands of copies there at the event, or to hand out and put at different places in the town before the event. That was about the best that we could do. River East didn't work a deal for us like the Chronicle did.
Okay. We have to talk to them.
Yeah, I called to say, because normally we do our own program. It's a 5x7 glossy little booklet, and we've sent it out to a printer. But this year, to be honest, it was just, I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to put it together. It's too much. There's too many other things going on. So we went and we asked the newspapers if they were able to do something for us program wise, but it wasn't going to be the same little booklet thing that, went to a printer. And we need more copies. Those things are expensive. And, we were making 4,000, 5,000 copies of them and not having enough and running out. One year we made 2,500 and we ran out before the event even started because everybody around town took them and put them places. So it gets expensive for the printing of the programs.
Okay. Well, I personally thank you for all the work that you've put in. I thank the Wyndham Chamber for taking this on. It started as a small event done by a few of the sugar houses. And, sadly, as time moves on and so those people passed away or what have you, the Wyndham Chamber of Commerce picked up the slack and has kept this thing going. And for all the people listening, this is probably one of the first outdoor big events, definitely in Eastern Connecticut, of the year. And the people that go to it, it's just a great time. So I thank you.
You're welcome. And if I could just take one more couple of seconds here. So the year before COVID, we count our numbers by how many people get off the shuttle buses from RAM to our location. And then we add how many people are walking down the street, just the best guess that we can. So we had almost 8,000 people over 2 days coming to the event. I mean, that was huge. The parking at RAM it didn't hold enough of the cars, and it was a consistent flow of people. So those were pretty darn good numbers. I'd be happy if we saw 2,000 or 3,000 with COVID still kind of on on the verge, but just to give you an idea of, and this is why I would really love for more local groups to get involved, is last year, a group of 4 girls, well, the last year we did it, a group of 4 girls was doing a fundraiser for a school project, and they were raising money to send to an organization for fresh water for some country in like Africa. And they showed up and I kind of laughed and said, you guys are going to run out of food. And like, no, we've been baking for a whole, week. Well, by noon they were sold out, and they were hoping to raise $500, and they ended up raising like $2,500 over the weekend. Their mothers stayed up all night on Saturday just to bake enough stuff so they could be there on Sunday. I have a lady who does cotton candy, and she started this like three Maple Fest ago. Her kids were going to some school, like going to Germany or something, some field trip and some, big trip, and she needed to make money. And I said, you should do the cotton candy because I don't want to do it anymore. It's too sticky and you're going to need thousands of cups. And she showed up with like 200. And I'm like, honey, you need thousands. She made like $5,000 in cotton candy, some ridiculous amount of money. She was hoping to make enough for her 2 kids. And she's like, I made enough not only to pay for their whole trip, but both 2 girls she had. And now she's doing it as a business. So if you do something that's unique and you put some effort into it, the bake sales make hundreds of dollars. And then just say, so even the Historical Society sells maple baked beans. I don't know how many people actually say, I'm going to go and have a cup of baked beans. So it's not like cotton candy where every kid has to have it, but they still end up profiting after all expenses, $300 or $400 on just baked beans. So almost any organization can raise money for their group with a little bit of effort. So like I said, I'd love to see the youth groups and the school groups and those kind of folks participating more.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions? Anything? Okay. Thank you very much. And we will see you literally, if I had a brain, little over 2 weeks.
I'll make sure everybody keeps their fingers crossed that it's going to be 50 degrees this year.
Thank you.
And no
All
snow.
No snow. Have a good
No
night.
rain.
Thanks for everything. We'll see you guys then.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Town managers report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've been working with Diane on this Maple Fest, so she stole a little bit of my thunder on that report. But as you well know, we've been deep cycle budget mode. So that's taken up most of the time in the last week or two. Well, myself and my staff, town staff. I've been working with RAM. RAM did change their budget on Monday night. We just received the new numbers later today, so Donna will be sending those out to both the boards of selectmen and the boards of finance. Put them in your budget books, probably tomorrow. I have a meeting with Congressman Joe Courtney. He's coming in tomorrow. We're going to talk about possible water project from the Yamston Lake area, running it up Route 85 and trying to connect it to the center water station or situation there. And that would be an enhancement for more water, more water, which we desperately need for multiple reasons. I'm also having a meeting with Jim Cilio first thing tomorrow morning with a new developer that's possibly interested the land on Johnny Horton Boulevard. So keep your fingers crossed. His questions are around water too. So we're really trying to get this water thing solved. I'm working with Patrick, the town's planner, and the Connecticut Water Company. And Kathy Ostin has introduced a Senate bill for bonding monies. I forget the number for that, but it actually mentions the town of Hebron looking for bonding monies for this water project. So we've got the word out there trying to get monies for this in a couple different areas, some grants, some bonding monies, and hopefully maybe Joe Courtney can help us in another area as well. So we're really trying to get that funded so we can enhance the water in the center of town and keep our economic development moving forward. So I don't have a lot more than that. The budget took up most of the weeks, but I will be away next week, so I'm going to leave Donna Lanza in charge. I think her and Gail will run the meeting on the 8th in your absence, Danny. So I'll just make people aware, and I'll send out an email with her contact information tomorrow morning. And that's all I had.
Okay, perfect. Anybody have any questions? Okay, moving on. Our first would be old business. And I believe we've got the COVID-19 mask update and mask mandate discussion.
Yeah, so
Go ahead, please.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So we know, I think people have been following what the new guidelines are for the schools. Masks are now optional. I've been working with the two superintendents regarding that, also with the Chatham Health District Director. And at this time, the town of Hebron has a mask mandate for our public buildings, our municipal buildings. And with the numbers where they're at and the advice of the health director, I'm suggesting that at midnight tonight, that sunset, and we can also make masks optional. There still may be some other federal laws. They say you have to wear it during transit, things of that nature. But as far as the town's regulation to wear masks or mandate masks in the municipal buildings, I think it would be okay if we were to relax that moving forward and just monitor the infection rates. And if the numbers later on in the end of the summer, fall, or winter start to go up again, we may have to revisit this. But I think as of right now, we should follow suit with what the schools are doing.
And I'll speak up. I basically agree. My only question, and since we have both Gail and Sharon on, I just want to know what Sharon's thoughts are on the senior center aspect of it. You know, only because that is more of a targeted type population. You know, I always keep a mask in my pocket. If my customer wants me to wear it, I put it on. If not, I don't. But you know, that's my own personal thing. I don't want to push my, whatever down everybody else's throats. So I'd like to hear what both they have to say and what the other board members have to say.
Obviously, the seniors are a vulnerable population and some quite immunocompromised. One of the issues is logistics. We do not have someone at the front desk, and two of our programs that we currently are running, our AARP tax aid program and our balance program that is through the Connecticut Healthy Living Collective, are still requiring people to wear masks. So it would be difficult to have people coming in the building and some have to wear masks because of the program they're attending and others don't have to wear masks. I was hoping that just for the month of March, we may be able to continue with masks and then revisit it because both of those programs will be over by then.
Okay. Andy or Gail?
I think Gail's on mute, but Sharon knows when she asked me that question, of course, I wouldn't push back. I sent that right to the Chatham Health Director with her concerns, and he responded back to that. So Sharon, you can speak to that as well. He still wasn't looking to push that, but if there's federal programs that require that, then we weren't going to not abide by that. But I get Sharon's concerns. How can you have some people, in the building wear a mask and other ones not? So I'll leave it to that.
And as you mentioned, Andy, for Dial-A-Ride, because of that being a federal transit program, people do
Right.
have to still wear their masks on the Dial-A-Ride vehicles.
That's why I said that, yeah.
It kind of gets a bit confusing with you have to wear it for this and not for that. So,
I mean, I'm okay if you want to make an exception for the senior center, but it's just going to be hard to enforce that without the rest of the town or the management enforcing that. So I'll just point that out, but I don't have a problem carving that out.
I agree. AARP tax aid program has told us that if people are not wearing masks, they will not serve them. So that's why we at least need to enforce it for them, and then it would be confusing to not enforce it for others.
Okay.
Gail as the liaison or other Board of Selectmen?
I see people walking into the senior center and you're going to say, where are you going? And where are you going? And you're going to give them two different mandates. I think it needs, at least through the month of March, we need to have everyone wearing a mask. It's the only sensible thing to do. And of course, with the transportation, there is no choice. We have
Right.
to have people masked because that's not a rule made by us. But AARP is quite vehement about it, and I know that evidence-based program also says you need to wear a mask. So we don't have any choice. And you know how popular the AARP program is. That's tax preparation for people through AARP. So masks have to be worn there.
I see
Oh,
Mark.
Dennis, yeah, I agree with Gail. Well said. I think making an exception is the smart, safe, reasonable thing to do. Just for that vulnerable population, and because we don't want to interfere with any of the services that they get. Agree with Gail.
Yeah, if we didn't require people to wear masks, they're coming in, they're going to the AARP, as Sharon said, they would not get service. Then where would they go to get their taxes filled out? So we
Tiffany?
just need to do what we need to do.
I was just going to say, I agree. I think follow the science means that cases are down right now, and we need to, change that behavior accordingly, given the positivity rate. I agree with Gail and Mark that I think for the month of March, it just makes sense to have it that way. The only thing I'd like to make sure, and this is for you, Andy, I want to make sure that town staff are empowered and comfortable if they would like to continue wearing masks to do so. I know that it'll be optional, but I also know that sometimes people can be confrontational about this issue. So I just want to make sure that town staff will feel comfortable, if they choose to wear a mask or not.
Absolutely.
Tiffany, also, I believe all of the barriers, the plexiglass, all that safety equipment is going to stay in place, I
Right.
believe. So, I mean, there is that layer of protection also.
Excellent. Thank you.
Peter, did you want to weigh in?
I agree with what's been said and would support the exception being made as outlined. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know, do we need to do that as a motion? If so, it would be that we will remove the mask mandates in all town buildings with the exception of the senior center, which we will revisit that structure literally in a month to see where the COVID positivity rate is at that point in time. Does that cover what we need to do?
That's fine. I could do it in an email, but that's even better. The Board of Selectmen take action.
But that way it's on our shoulders. So when people want to throw the darts, hopefully not too many poisoned ones, it'll be at us. Okay. Gail?
I'm in favor. Aye.
Mark?
Mark Rivera, aye.
Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
And Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, thank you. I believe our next item is there any other old business before we go? Hearing none. Our next item will be item 8A. Andy?
Yes, so once again, that's why Sharon Gerard, our director, has joined us here tonight to talk to the NCAAA Hebron Outreach and Social Support Services grant application. So if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Sharon Gerard.
Sure, please.
Hey, good evening. So under the Older Americans Act, older Americans are considered 60 and up, which doesn't make me personally very happy, but
Some of us resemble that.
yeah. So in 2020, the 60 plus population in Hebron was 22.7% of the total population, with 12.95% of that group being 80 plus. By 2025, the 60 plus population will be just about 30%, with again the 80 plus population being almost 16%. So our senior population is growing. The first grant that I have before you is the grant for outreach. Outreach consists of various tactics to ensure that people are aware of our services and that other stakeholders are aware of our services, and then helping people by providing them with information, education, assistance with connecting with any programs that they need to be connected with, referral and follow-up. So this grant to the Area Agency on Aging is intended to help to support those efforts. I will mention that with all of the grants, the Area Agency on Aging this year did receive some American Rescue Plan monies. So the monies that we will be receiving from them are being split by half of the funding from the Older Americans Act and half from the American Rescue Plan. So I think you have before you the amounts that were requested from the Area Agency on Aging. Let me just, each grant also consists of an in-kind match. And the in-kind match is a portion of existing staff time, supplies, utilities for the building, et cetera. So there is no cash match for any of these grants.
Okay.
So for the outreach grant, we are requesting a total of $18,720 from the Area Agency on Aging, with a in-kind match of $42,898.
Okay, perfect. I'll read the motion. We'll open it up for discussion and get this one put to bed. The motion is moved that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the grant application in the amount of $18,720 with $42,898 in-kind matching funds from the Hebron Senior Center budget for the fiscal year 2023 North Central Area Agency on Aging Incorporated, Hebron Outreach Information, Assistance and Referral, and Social Support Services Grant Project Grant, and the town manager, Andrew J. Tierney, be authorized to apply for, accept, and receive this grant and any necessary documents. So reading the motion, anybody have any questions or comments? Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Gail? You're on mute.
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Mark?
Mark Rivera, an enthusiastic aye.
Okay. Tiffany
Tiffany Teely, aye.
and myself, aye. It's a good thing I see everybody up there.
So the next grant before you is the grant for therapeutic activity. Years ago, the Area Agency on Aging funded a variety of fitness programs. Now they have moved towards any of the programs that they fund needing to be evidence-based. So all of the programs that we are offering have been proven to provide enhancements to one's physical, mental, emotional health. And we're pleased that we're able to offer programs of that caliber. Our fitness programs are very well attended. So for the therapeutic activity grant, again, we have the in-kind match. And the request is for $11,700 with an in-kind match of $53,018.
Okay. Again, I'll read the motion, open it up for discussion. Before I read the motion, people out in the audience, I don't know if you can see it, but literally there's got to be 20, 30 pages of work that Sharon puts into each one of these grants, and it may even be more. The amount of work, effort that goes into doing these is incredible. So I just want to thank her and her staff for all of that work. The motion is moved that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the grant application in the amount of $11,700 for the $53,018 in-kind matching funds from the Hebron from the Senior Center budget for the fiscal year 2022 North Central Area Agency on Aging Incorporated Hebron Therapeutic Activity Grant, and that town manager Andrew J. Tierney be authorized to apply for, accept, and receive this grant and to sign any necessary documents. All in favor or any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say one thing.
Sure, please.
I think it would be wise for the public that may be watching for Sharon to explain evidence-based. As I've been the liaison for so many years, I know what it is when she says that. And I think the evidence-based shows why we need these programs and the viability of them. So I would like to, if she could give a brief explanation of that.
Sure. Evidence-based programs are programs that have been through rigorous testing to see that they actually net the results that they are intended to provide. So for example, with our enhanced fitness program, someone goes through some baseline testing at the beginning of the program. For example, checking their balance, seeing how easy it is for them to get up and down from a chair, test of their muscle mass strength in their extremities, etc. And then at different intervals throughout the program, those things are checked again. And people are just amazed at the improvement that they are able to make. With these programs being evidence-based, the program must adhere to the fidelity of that program. So we can't deviate and do things a different way. You must adhere to the fidelity of the program in order to ensure that people are going to get those benefits that that program is intended to provide to them. So again, we have a variety of evidence-based programs, not just the therapeutic recreation programs, but we have the Aging Mastery program, We have the Zero Isolation Program. So we have other programs that are evidence-based that are not in the realm of the therapeutic recreation. So we're pleased to be able to offer those programs. Typically, those are in partnerships with other organizations because of the fact that there's expensive licensing that needs to be held to offer these programs.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Mark?
My turn, Dan.
Your turn.
Thanks for all your hard work, Sharon. Mark
Thank
Rivera,
you.
aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you.
Okay. And the last one is transportation. I think as you all know, we have 3 vehicles that we provide what's called on-demand, door-to-door transportation for seniors. So on-demand being people are able to make a request. It is on a first-come, first-served basis. So we do encourage people to make their request as quickly as in advance or as far in advance as they can. It's door to door. Again, we're assisting people from getting to their exterior door to the exterior door of where they are going. All of our dial-a-ride drivers are, I cannot speak highly enough for our dial-a-ride drivers. They are caring, compassionate, conscientious individuals. They really are our eyes and ears in the community, because some of these people who use our dial-a-ride are not people who are attending activities at the center. So they are the ones providing us information in terms of if they're seeing any differentiation in someone's physical or emotional or mental health. So our dial-a-ride does operate 5 days a week and provides people with transportation for medical appointments, grocery shopping, hairdressing, bank, post office, pharmacy, et cetera, et cetera. So for that grant, we are requesting $32,292 from the Area Agency on Aging with an in-kind match of $64,990.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. I'll read the motion, open it up for discussion. Move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the grant application in the amount of $32,292 with $64,990 in-kind matching funds from the Hebron van budget for the fiscal year 2023 North Central Area Agency on Aging Incorporated Hebron Transportation Project Grant, and that the town manager, Andrew J. Tierney, be authorized to apply for, accept, and receive this grant and to sign any necessary documents. Hearing the motion, is there any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Shake it up a little bit. Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Peter, Mark, are you on?
Mark Rivera, aye.
Okay, and Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you very, very much for all of your hard work. And again, people out there, if you're listening, you know, these literally thousands upon thousands of dollars of grants help the town monetarily in so many ways. So again, thank you for all this time and effort put into doing these grant applications. You know, Andy, the entire town staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Okay, Andy.
Next up, Mr. Chairman, item 8D, would be the Assessor's Grand List Report. With us tonight, we have Deb Gernhardt, Hebron's Assessor, and she will provide an overview of the attached Grand List Report and the effects of revaluation. Deborah.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, yes, so like Andy said, this was a revaluation year, state mandated every 5 years. So the town of Hebron went through it. It was not a full measure and list. That only has to be done once every 10 years. So that'll be the next revaluation. This one was just more of like a statistical. We do inspect some properties, any new improvements, and any properties that may have questionable data. But otherwise, we basically doing a sales analysis, equalizing the grand list, bringing the market values up to date. And as most of you are aware, the market is up and has been for just about a year now. So we did have a fairly good increase in the grand list. With the revaluation, I did try and stay a little bit conservative on the values, but our hands are tied with some of the testings that we have to pass for the state, and I'll explain those in just a minute. But the real estate portion of the grand list went up 15.62%. Personal property actually had a little bit of a decrease. It was 0.06% of a decrease, mainly contributed to COVID. Motor vehicles had a very large increase, and as most of you have probably seen in the news or read in the media somewhere, that motor vehicles are also way up in value. So that had an increase of 24.7%, with a total grand list increase of 16.15%. So, like I said, I tried to stay a little bit conservative because the economists are thinking that over the next 5 years, that the market on real estate may drop some. So with the next reval being in 5 years from now, instead of having a large decrease like happened back in the 2011 revaluation, where the grand list decreased about 13%, I want to try and keep it across the board and steady. We have 2 tests that we have to pass right off the top when we're implementing these tables. One of them is a sold property test, and we take all the properties that sold in town that are good, usable, valid sales. We can't consider foreclosures, bankruptcies, family transfers, anything like that. It's just basically what a willing buyer and a willing seller agrees upon. And we have to pass a test with that. And when we develop these tables with those sales, then we take and we get a ratio. And the state says that our ratio has to be between 63% and 77%, ideally trying to hit 70%. And our townwide ratio came in at 67.5%. The higher the number, the higher the values. The lower the number, the lower the values came in. So we're not too far from the 70% townwide, but 67.5 is saying that the values were just a little bit on the low side, which again, I wanted to try and stay a little bit conservative. Don't want to be sticker shocking people as well. The other test is with the unsold properties. So once we pass that test for the sold properties, we apply those same tables to all the properties in town that didn't sell. And it's not a ratio, but it's a percentage that we're looking for. And that percentage has to be between 0.95 and 1.05. And the towns came in at 1.042. And again, this one, with the lower the number, the higher the values, the higher the number, the lower the values. So that number to me was a little bit low, but we're still good. We passed all the tests for the state. All the paperwork has been filed. The CEO, Andy, had sent in a letter implementing the revaluation, so it's a go. But otherwise, so it was a good increase for revaluation, looking at what some other towns did. And I spoke with a few assessors before we even started applying these tables, and a lot of them felt the same way about trying to be on a little bit of the conservative side. But we're seeing some percentages just about across the board from all the other towns that went through revaluations. So, any questions?
Any questions from anyone? I have a couple. Knowing that our state legislature is looking at some sort of tax relief, they have discussed the motor vehicle taxes as putting a cap on that. There was a report, I forgot by what agency, stating that Connecticut, it sounded like Connecticut's the highest property tax paying entity in the nation. I don't know if that's totally accurate or not. But with that said, what are you hearing or hearing the things on the motor vehicles and all? How is that going to affect us?
I haven't done any calculations on it yet, but actually that went into effect, I believe, for the 2019 grand list or 18 grand list, where they've already got a cap of 45 mils for motor vehicles. Hebron is not falling into that. So, but what they've actually done was, it's actually two proposed laws out there right now, and one of them says a cap of 30 mils, and the other one says a cap of 29 mils. But they are still talking about reimbursement to the towns for some of the revenue lost on that. There's still pretty rough drafts, I think. So I don't have any feel as to whether these things are just going to public hearing now. So I really haven't heard a whole lot on what they're looking at, doing and what are the chances of these passing. But what they're doing is they're looking at reducing it from 45 mils to, I believe they're looking at the 29 mils.
That's what I heard that. But
So what's going to happen is the tax burden is going to get shifted from motor vehicle to personal property and real estate. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please, Andy.
if I may, I can add a little bit of light to that. So Deb's right. They're shooting for 29 mils versus the 45. So of course, the larger cities are happy with that, like the Manchesters and Waterburys, Bridgeports. But the proposed bill that they're looking at now, it wouldn't be off of this grand list. It would be the one before. So although this increase, we wouldn't see that extra money to Hebron. So there's quite a bit of pushback. And there's not a guarantee that we'd be made whole with the reimbursement that they're discussing. So we could actually even lose some money is another bad thing. But what Deb just said is accurate. Whatever monies we lose would be transferred to the real property or real estate, personal property or real estate. So we're watching that through CCM. And like I said, there's some cities that are in favor of it because they think that's going to help them out. Out here in Hebron, a lot of people own land and own their cars where, maybe people in the city more renting. So they have, they would see a better benefit to that on their vehicle. But until the formula is guaranteed to make us whole, and once again, like I said, they're not even looking at this grand list. It would be the grand list from the year before without this big bump. So we would lose that right out of the gate. That wouldn't be reimbursed. So I don't know how much legs it's grown, but we're watching that.
Okay. Question. I've never leased a car. But I would assume that even if you lease a car, the leasing company still comes after the leasee for the town taxes on that vehicle. Is that so? That would affect them even. I don't see where they fear there's be a winner in that.
Yeah, the leasing companies do. What they typically do is they pay the bills in July, and then a month or two later, they send a bill to the person leasing that vehicle. In fact, just to let you know, one of the things that I started doing about 10 years in town here, and I may be the only assessor in the state that does this, but a lot of times what the leasing companies will do, and this is not having to do with the budget too much, but when you get rid of a car, you can get that tax bill prorated. And the leasing companies will pay the bill, then they'll charge the individual, and then about 2 months later, they'll send me the documents because the vehicle was sold halfway through the year and get reimbursed. And what we do in the assessor's office here in town is we send a letter to the property owner that was leasing that vehicle to let them know that the leasing company is getting a refund. and that they paid them in full, so that person needs to contact the leasing company for a refund. We do that
That's
all the time.
nice.
The
I mean,
leasing companies are a lot of fun, but that's one reason why I won't lease a vehicle. But
I'm sure they all would give all of that excess money back.
it's
I'm-
been very successful in town, just sending that courtesy letter to the property owners. So,
Okay.
but just a couple more things I just want to highlight real quickly that do affect the grand list. This is the last year that the senior assisted living facility is going to be getting their tax break. They will be paying 80% of their tax bill this year and getting a 20% tax break for this year. So it is the last year for that program. And with the crumbling foundations, we still have just the 4 that we had last year. Of course, we want the revaluation, so the values changed and still get adjusted for that depreciation that they get for the exemption. But we get updates on a monthly basis, and right now, the state is reporting that there's been 31 properties in town that have reported to the state, and 25 of them have had been tested and reimbursed for the testing. We've only had 8 properties come forward for the exemption. And again, 4 of them are still getting the exemption, and 4 of them have had their foundations repaired. So there are a lot more in town, but right now we've just got the 8 that came forward, with 4 remaining that still have not been repaired. And the other thing I just want to mention is Board of Assessment Appeals. If anybody feels that they need to appeal their assessment for whatever reason, the March hearings are done by appointment only. The application has to be in the office. It cannot be postmarked by state statute. It has to be in the office by 4 o'clock Monday, March 21st. And then the hearings are in April, Monday, April 4th, Wednesday, April 6th, and Saturday, April 23rd. We'll be filling those slots as they come along. So, but as of today, we do not have any applications yet, but people still have time to apply if they feel they need to appeal for their assessments for real estate and personal property and the supplemental motor vehicle. Motor vehicles for the regular list are held only in September. So.
Okay. I personally think that there are a lot of people that really do not understand all of the interworkings between the assessments and the mill rate and the taxes, and they get a letter. They really don't understand how it all works together. I don't know if you could do any kind of a clarification on that or a quick discussion.
Well, you can't appeal your taxes, but you can appeal the assessment, and the assessment's supposed to reflect the market value at the time we go through revaluation, which the values that are put on the properties right now are the market value. One of the big questions I get from people when they get their new assessment notices at a reval is, they'll say, I didn't do any improvements to my house over the last 20 years. Why is my assessment going up? It's simply the market. What people are selling their houses for. And once the Board of Finance and the town passes by referendum the budget, then a mill rate gets set. And it's basically the grand list and the budget minus any, as all of you know, but for the public listening, minus any state and federal grant monies, any revenues that come into the town, get deducted from that. But also, what I like to explain to people is that we can't take this total grand list figure, because there's some people that don't pay. Some people don't have the ability to pay. So there's a percentage of the total grand list that gets used as well, minus all of these exemptions that we have. And then that determines an individual's property taxes, their individual assessment times that mill rate. And again, unfortunately, you can't appeal your tax dollars. You can only appeal your assessment.
Andy, did you want to say something? Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, I get people as like, I keep telling her, you need to put all the numbers together. It's not, you just can't utilize the one number. You know, in my small little mind, in my perfect world, your assessment goes up. You know, the town needs XYZ amount of dollars. If everything else stays the same, your assessment goes up, the mill rate goes down, you pay the same dollars in taxes. Is that a kind of quick, easy, accurate statement, or?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I'd let people know that, you know, if the assessment, the grand list total goes up and the budget stays the same, then it affects the mill rate, and the mill rate could possibly come down, which is something that, you know, going through a revaluation with an increase of over 16% is a possibility. I don't know what the budget is coming in, but historically, that's typically what happens. Whereas the opposite, like I said, being conservative, because in 5 years from now, if the grand list ends up having a decrease because of the market crashing, then the town still needs the same amount in the budget, the mill rates are going to go up. So meaning that, and with this scenario, some people are not going to pay more in taxes. Some people pay about the same, and some people will pay more because different style houses appreciated in value over others. We saw more of an increase in ranches, raised ranches, capes, a higher percentage of increase than we did for colonials, very small increase in contemporaries. And that's just because that's not the demand on the market right now. Ranches and raised ranches is primarily, I've seen that for a couple of years now, and I think that has to do with the baby boomers. They're looking for one-story houses.
Yeah.
That's why I think we saw, you know, a larger increase in that. But, you know, another question I have a lot of times is people say, you know, my house is the same size as somebody else's house. You know, why is it assessed more? Well, ideally, I'd love to see a town have all brand new houses built the same year that we go through revaluation and sell them, because it would make my job a lot easier. But that doesn't happen. So, but I explained to people that, you know, if a builder built two identical houses, but one of them had all high-end quality finishing, and the other one was very low-end quality finishing, that developer is not going to sell those houses for the same price. So that's why every aspect of your house is taken into consideration when we set these values and set these tables.
Thank you.
And Dan,
Yes,
Any
yes,
questions?
sir.
I can answer that question for Deb, but it might be pertinent if people are watching or they're going to watch the tape later on. So presently, I believe our mill rate is 36.33, and the proposed budget that was handed out by myself to the board on Monday is, I believe, a 32.04 before we've gone through the budget process. So that's the difference in the mill rate that's being proposed already at this time. I think we're probably going to try to whittle that down even more.
About 4 mils, that's about what I estimated.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, I thank you very, very much. There was documentation talking about other, you know, properties and that kind of stuff. Andy, you were saying that there was going to be something on the website that people could go and look at their assessment, or what were you talking about the other night? I'm sorry.
We have a list, Deb, I'll let you explain that as well. We put a list together where people can look up their address, and it'll show them the change due to reval. And what the effect it's going to do to their taxes.
It's got last year's assessment and taxes and this year's assessment with the proposed mill rate for taxes.
Okay, and how do they access that?
Donna just had it up. If you go to the town's webpage, you can access that. We also are going to have it in the town clerk's office for people that aren't computer savvy, and I believe we're going to have it at the senior center as well. Douglas Library, and Town Hall, Douglas Library, and the Senior Center.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
Have a great, safe weekend. Stay
Thank you.
warm.
You
for
as
now.
well. Yeah, you too. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Deb.
Okay, the next thing I think, this is something, and I don't know, Andy, if you want to talk about it or Peter?
Yes, excuse me. This is something Selectmen Casper has asked that we place on the agenda, so we had a conversation and I felt it appropriate. So I will turn it over to Peter Casper.
Thank you, Andy, and I appreciate your advice and counsel when I called. I've gotten some folks that have expressed an interest or a question thinking about some of the funds that we have available to us and the long-term benefit for the town residents. And one thing that had come up, which I know has come up before in the past, was the development of a dog park. And so I just, at any suggestion, I actually, being the Parks and Rec Commission liaison, I actually did mention it in public comment during that last meeting, just to sort of gauge some interest there, because Andy had said at some point that would be sort of an avenue to sort of ask that question, because it would fall into that purview as well as his. And so I am putting it out as a topic for consideration, just a couple of quick things, and then I'll get your comments on it. Just for those that are dog owners, about 70% of American households have pets, and then a majority of those, a higher percentage are dogs. So about 40% of households in America have a dog, one dog, and we spend as citizens somewhere in the neighborhood about $110 billion with a B on our pets. If you look at the dog parks around, and I think I spend 100 billion of it. So the rest of America spends like 10 billion, I think. But if you look at the dog parks around the different communities and that we see at Colchester and Glastonbury, and there's a lot of dog parks in Connecticut. We have a family home in Westerly and dog parks down there. And if you look at the citizen comments and the ratings for those dog parks, there's a great deal of passion and interest in that. As a dog, if you don't own a dog, there's a big difference between having parks and having trails and open space where dogs are leashed versus where dogs can go be off leash. It's night and day in terms of the impact on the pets, and there's a lot of benefits to the community, and so it would seem to me that it might be worth thinking about. We have either how we sort of take the next steps into consideration are a couple of areas that we can look at, but it seemed to be that the reaction was from the Parks and Rec Commission that it was something they would have had interest in at least learning more about. To give you just a quick thumbnail of what's needed, typically the average size of a dog park typically is about an acre. Obviously, some towns have much bigger property. It's the cost, fencing, and it's the same sort of structure. You have a spot for small dogs, a spot for large dogs, and an entryway where the dogs can transition from being on leash to then intersecting in the actual dog park. And so there's good dialogue around it. There's a lot of evidence that it's really beneficial to the community overall, and it's a long-term opportunity to really provide value to our community, since a large percentage of our residents do own a dog. And then, like myself as a dog owner, I go out of town to bring my dog to a dog park, and looking at all the beautiful space that we have, and even long-term, Andy had suggested even long-term, a public works facility and acreage there that I've seen in many towns. They put parks, dog parks tied to town facilities like that, but something that I think would have a great deal of benefit to discuss and consider potentially for the town. And so there is just a last thought on how to move for next steps. I mean, there is some suggestions that you can form a committee of local citizens to do some research and make some recommendations, so the burden simply isn't tossed onto the Parks and Rec Commission or Andy's department to come up with information. So that's one avenue, and I'm willing to proceed there if there's interest in getting more information and getting public feedback from that. So I just wanted to bring it up as something that I've heard there's interest in. I think it's a good idea for the town to look at. And I would just welcome any comments that you have and or whether or not you have support for us continuing this dialogue. So thank you for putting on the agenda.
People, comment? Go ahead, please, Tiffany.
So I think it's a great idea. I love dogs. I don't have one yet. I'm hoping to get one this year, which will be really exciting. But I think what really resonates with me is that people are going out of town to take their dogs somewhere where they can go and run and socialize. And I think, too, dogs are pack animals, and that socialization is actually really important for them. And I think it's good for their overall health. So I just wanted to say I support it. I think it's a great idea. I think location will be a question, but I also like the idea of having a citizen committee. It's another way for Hebron citizens to participate and be a part of this process. So I would support going in that direction.
Anyone else?
Dan,
Yes, sir.
I like to support everything that Peter ever comes up with. At this time, I wouldn't be supportive of it. I don't think with taxes going up, with public safety concerns growing, that it's a good time for it. I don't mind discussing it and maybe determining how we go forward in the future. I just don't see how we could fund something like that while we're shortchanging public safety, senior citizens. Because everything is a trade-off in the budget. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. You know, Jessica and I have a dog too. Being a police officer, I see dogs all over the place. They walk them at Ram, they walk them at Vets Park, they walk them everywhere. Maybe that would be a place they'd go to instead. Burnt Hill Park. It's not like we don't have anywhere for dogs to go. That's just how I feel at the moment.
Okay. Gail?
We don't have a dog at the moment. Our last one died a couple of years ago. But back when I had a dog, it would have been nice because you can't walk. I can have the dog out on the run on my back acre, but I can't bring the dog to the place to leave the dog loose. And I think that is very important for a dog, especially with the Alaskan dog that we had. She really wanted to run. And Jack and I weren't going to run with her. So a dog park would have been great. And I have one of my 3 kids lives in town, and she's, besides kids, she's got 2 dogs and a cat. And she would love that. I just know without asking her.
My personal feelings are that this is the first time in my life that I actually don't have a dog. I've always had dogs, usually bird dogs. And thankfully I was always able to either on state, properties or whatever, find places to run because bird dogs want to run. That's what they do. I would like to see a committee get formed to be able to inform us as to where, possible costs, that the town would have to incur. I think before we nix it, I think we need to hear more about it, what can be done, the parameters around it, what other towns have done, and then to see just how that might fit into Hebron. I'm not sure there's really a big expense in doing a dog park, but I don't know. And so without finding out those facts, I think we would be remiss to just say no at this point. Tiffany, please.
And if I may, I just want to ask Peter very quickly, you're not envisioning that this goes into the budget we're currently discussing. This is something for a future budget year, correct, is what you're envisioning?
Yeah, so I think of it as some of the the rescue funds, maybe for for the next year or something, where, because it would be some, I'm not trying to jam anything for this budget. I just think that there are some funds that we might think about that would be beneficial to the community that would be coming from that as a suggestion. And Dan, just from an expense perspective, again, I've done a little bit of research. I'm not an expert, but you're talking about 5-foot fencing, park benches, a spot for waste bags, access. And here's probably the expensive part, and the part that we wouldn't know anything about yet is access to water. So again, that could limit, and then some signage. And then obviously from a parks perspective, there is work involved to maintain. But in terms of the physical infrastructure expense associated with it, at least from the ones that I've seen and researched, there isn't a significant physical expense, because other than you're putting fencing up, no question. But you're not building structures, and you're not, doing, and you have to have parking. So there is logistics involved, but and I think it's good dialogue. So Mark, you never have to always agree with me, because I always appreciate that you have well thought out ideas and suggestions, and in this case, maybe reservations. It really helps for good dialogue, and it allows us to sort of think through any idea that whether, I'm just representing my thoughts as well as others that have asked me. But I think having good dialogue and talking through that, what the trade-offs are and the benefits, and there's people that really would be asking, is there going to be noise? Is there, are dogs going to fight each other? All these things, research has to be done. And so I welcome your thoughts always. So I appreciate the fact that you sort of brought up some concerns, and if there's an opportunity to move forward to develop, as Danny said, to develop some additional information for future consideration, I would welcome that, and I'm happy to chair that if there's something a consideration for a committee going forward. But again, it doesn't have to be today. I appreciate the fact that we've had good discussion, and there's consideration for maybe developing some additional information.
Well, hey, and just listening to this, Tiffany and Dan clarified something for me. Tiffany clarified that we're not trying to spend money this year where we're scrambling around to not hit the taxpayers too bad, but take care of public need. And that's satisfied me. And Dan saying that, what does this cost? So if it doesn't cost that much and we can make it work, I would support it. I like to think in terms of specifics. What are you trading for another thing? So if you're going to have a pickleball court versus a dog park, to me that's a no-brainer, because the dog park is going to get way more participation. More people are going to be involved. I mean, you see so many empty fields, empty everything's not being used. I can't see that there wouldn't be people at a dog park. So I like to think in terms of specific. What should we spend our money on? What are the people going to use more? What do they want more? I can't say I've ever heard anybody, and I'm at RAM, I'm involved in sports. I haven't really heard anybody even mention the word pickleball. So I don't know where that comes from. I could be irrelevant. Maybe I am, because I'm getting older, but that's how I like to think, Pete. So
it's a great way to think about it. And that's why I think it might make sense to form a committee. Again, if we're not putting initial pressure on the town to do that sort of research, and with that independent committee, do some research and bring back more of those facts. Is it a $10,000 investment, or is it a $30,000 investment? Again, I have no idea of what fencing costs or any of that. So I think, there's an opportunity to gauge interest. There's an opportunity to bring more facts. So then when it does get elevated, if we decide to move forward, then we could compare it to other things and then make decisions, or let the citizens make a decision. Do they want to, let's just say 2 years, whatever the equivalent of the pickleball court is for next year. Do you want that or the dog park? It could be that sort of dialogue. So.
I would support that entirely. And, thanks for enlightening me a little bit, guys. I'm just worried about this year. So if we're forming a committee to think about it, to be reasonable about it, to really have a well thought out plan, what's it going to cost? How are we going to use it? How are we going to support it? How much is it going to maintain? All those questions answered. I think that's important. So you guys have probably changed my idea a little bit here.
And then my other question again would be, and this would be something the committee would ascertain, through the town and what have you, is there's always the potential of an insurance ramification too.
Yep.
So I think the formation of a committee who could, delve into all of these different pros and cons would be good. And I'm not sure, put Andy on the spot, how would or what would the next steps be in this?
No, you're not putting me on the spot. I've talked to Peter, and he's already kind of mentioned that he's the liaison to Parks and Rec. So without trying to burden the whole Parks and Recs commission, I would employ Peter to work with our Parks and Rec director, and we could come up and solicit volunteers that want to be on that committee to work. I think Craig, the Parks and Rec director, should be involved in that committee as a staffer, because if this were to come to fruition, he would be the person that would be in charge to maintain that park. He has some expertise from where he came from, I believe, with the dog park in Kingston, Rhode Island. So
Yeah.
I think he may have a little bit of some knowledge on cost and maintenance and insurance and so forth, at least for that facility. But it kind of falls underneath the Parks and Recs preview with open, whether it be in like an open space or an open dog park or a park. It's, the word park kind of falls underneath Parks and Rec. So I would have Peter, if it was all right with the rest of the board, communicate with Craig and myself at first, and then we could solicit members for a committee and see how that works, move that forward, or bring that back to the Board of Selectmen for approval.
Is everybody okay with that? Raise your hand,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Perfect, okay. You've got it, Peter.
For your support, I'll work with both Andy and Craig, come up with a recommendation. I'll bring it back to the board at the next meeting, and then based on everyone's decision at that point, we can move forward or not with the formulating a committee and going from there. So thank you for your support and allowing me to have the dialogue. I appreciate it. And Andy, I'll reach out to Craig, and then we'll obviously keep you posted as appropriate.
Perfect.
Okay, beautiful. Is there any other new business? We have the draft agenda for the March 17th, 2022 meeting. Again, anybody or need to add anything or whatever, get a hold of the town staff so that can get discussed and added. Other than that, our next thing would be our consent agenda. And the only item we have is the approval of the minutes of February 17th. They were sent out and in everybody's town email. I don't know, did everybody have a chance to read them, or did anybody not have a chance to read them?
I read them, but if others have not, I mean, I suppose we could move it to the next meeting, but I had the opportunity to read them.
Okay. Anybody else?
I didn't read them.
I read them, but I was going to abstain because I was not at that meeting.
Okay. The only things that I had was if Judy Padell was speaking at a public comment, or if she was speaking as the good to know. And I kind of thought she was speaking as good to know. I don't know if it really makes a bit of difference, but just wanted a clarification. And then the only other thing is we were talking about the clarifications on the establishing or elimination of an ordinance. That was to be done, with input from legal counsel. And I didn't know if that needed to just get clarified, through legal counsel. And with Andy, were you able to do any of that or not?
No, we didn't get that information back yet in this short amount of time, but we will.
Yep, that's fine.
I anticipate having it possibly on the next agenda.
Okay. But that was my only comment to the minutes. And I don't know what everybody's feeling on that. And that was section 9A, the last sentence. So I can go either way, either to get it added or not. It's whatever people decide. Tiffany, any input?
I'd be happy to approve them with your amendments if the two other board members agree, because I know Gail's going to abstain. I think that's fine.
And Mark didn't read them, so did you want, Mark, did you want to take the chance to read them, or just do them next meeting?
Or I can trust you guys that everything's okay and we can approve it.
What a silly man. No. I'm sorry.
Well, Dan,
that was
Everybody's a comedian.
I know them, and so if there's three of us approving it and 2 abstentions, it passes, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would say we take a vote, and if that is the outcome, then it passes and we'll go from there. And I think your amendment, I remember Judy, I thought was good to know. And for me on the ordinance issue, I interpreted it as we were waiting for clarification. And so my interpretation of that was that would assume the legal counsel. So I'm not uncomfortable either way, whatever you decide, if you want to make an adjustment there or not. I don't think that's a critical item, although I understand the need for clarification. But I think it's okay, but it's.
If it's in there, it's in there. There is no, so I make a motion that we approve the February 17th, 2022 regular meeting minutes with the 2 clarifications. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Gail,
I abstain.
Mark,
I abstain.
Tiffany,
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Peter,
Peter Casper, aye.
and myself, Dan Larson, aye. Okay, good. That's done. Liaison reports. Anybody have any liaison reports? Gail?
Of course, I always do. The Senior Center Commission on Aging, we met yesterday, and there was a presentation given on age and dementia-friendly communities. The AARP tax preparation service is available, as Sharon mentioned. So, but you do need an appointment. So anyone who wants to go should call 860-228-1700. The senior bus, which has always been going to Walmart, now by popular demand, will also be going to Big Y. So that'll be fit into the schedule. Douglas Library. The book sale will be this Saturday. So I invite everyone to come to the book sale and say hi to me, because as always, I will be working. Monday night, the Strategic Plan Committee had a public forum. A lot of good input on the strategic plan was given. So Donna and I were there for that, and we felt it was a very good turnout and a lot of good thoughts given. And the next movie will be March 11th, a Friday, at 1 p.m., and it'll be The House of Gucci. From the Hebron Board of Ed, the only thing is the COVID mitigation. Masks are optional now for students and staff as of February 28th. And that's it, Dan.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Quickly, RAM first. At the RAM board meeting, Andy attended, and he made a very well thought out and articulate argument about why RAM has to contribute to lessening our budget and lowering taxes. And although it was well received, they went forward with spending a little more money. and I've been assured that they're going to look at it again and try their best to pair some items in other places. Andy, I really appreciate you doing that because as most of you know, I think all three of the burdens to the tax people have to share and sacrifice somewhere, not just always the town. The schools have to share in that burden. So I appreciate you doing that. Actually, they're having a meeting right now and they're still discussing the superintendent and they haven't arrived on one yet. With the AHM, we're trying to come up with the drug take back day and organize that. And AHM continues to be a godsend with the juvenile review board and trying to help juveniles find different ways to not get in trouble, and when they do get in trouble, a way of learning something so they don't do it again. So everybody's been working hard at that. I'm done.
Thank you. Tiffany?
So open space and land acquisition, we heard their presentation this past Monday at our budget workshop. The group has not met since then. From the Economic Development Commission, the commission had their first meeting with our marketing and branding study consultant. So what they did was they shared their initial findings on the demographics and market understanding. The EDC is going to organize a focus group in late March or early April, and they're going to meet with businesses and community groups to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities as the town begins to develop its brand. The EDC will also have a public survey later this spring. And they're also beginning to launch our annual business survey in town. Regretfully, I had a commitment the night of the Green Committee, but I will have a full report at our next meeting. And that's what I have.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Peter?
Just a couple of things. I refer to my notes. Both the Board of Finance and the Parks and Rec Commission met. Board of Finance spent some time talking about the audit and the completion of the audit, and did a budget analysis review, as all the departments are doing now. Talked about the fund balance a little bit and sort of anticipating the how that's going to be managed from current budget season going forward. So there's discussion around that. There was a discussion around forming a Board of Finance audit committee. So that is something that's continuing to be discussed. So that was interesting. An old business talked about COVID relief funds and the rescue fund money as well, just solidifying the discussion around when the money had to be spent and some other new developments that obviously Andy shared that with us, but Board of Finance talked a little bit about that. And then the Parks and Rec Commission, they had their rec leagues presented. So Craig's first working with the different folks trying to get some order into fields and scheduling and all that, some of that complexity that goes in with all the different sports. I did have a little bit of a discussion around some conflicts with flag football and figuring out, so again, some good discussion on how to manage fields, how to manage the communication and listening to the feedback from the different sports folks about that. I talked a little bit about Hebron Day, pollinator update, and just sort of a continuation of what we heard, giving them, Craig talked about giving them the median at Burnt Hill Park to do some additional work with the pollinator effort. So that was good to hear. And still looking for a couple of seasonal employees, but that's about it. But a good meeting and interesting topics. Thank you.
Okay. And myself, I have nothing from the fire department, as their meeting was Tuesday night. We had our budget, and Hebron Historic, I believe, is this week. So next week or our next meeting, I'll have something from that. With that, we have our public comment, and then once we hear from the public, if there are any comments from the public, then we would be then moving into an executive session. So Donna, is there anyone for public comment?
Not at this time.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Gail?
So at this time, it is 8:38. I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session. We will invite Andy in as we had decided. And Donna, I guess you'll turn the controls over to Andy?
Yes, I will. And Andy, I'm gonna
Okay.
make you the organizer because it doesn't show that you're organizer right now.
Okay.
Let us know when you're all set.
I'm gonna stop the recording, or do you want to vote on that motion first?
Oh, yeah, I guess we ought to do that to be, yeah.
Okay.
Everyone in favor of going into executive session at 8:39 now?
Yes, I,
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
And aye for me. Okay.